On today's episode of the JB Podcast, today we're going to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and my thoughts on it and how the future looks for Marvel. Hint, I'm a little disappointed. Let's get into it. So I apologize for the long delay for this, for my thoughts on this film. I saw this probably a week and a half ago. It was on opening weekend. And for those of you who don't know, the second weekend, I believe this is the lowest grossing second weekend for a Marvel movie. Since the MCU came out. I don't know how legit that was, but I saw that on Twitter, so that's just, that was just me half-assing it. But today, I'm going to talk about it. So, for the first part of this podcast, I'm going to give my spoiler-free thoughts, just in case you haven't seen the movie. Judging on the second weekend, I'm assuming a decent amount of people haven't seen it. So, if you are still interested in seeing it, at this point, I don't know how many left are you, but I'm going to do a few minutes of no spoilers, and then I'm going to go into spoilers. So, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. This is the third Ant-Man movie. It is directed by Peyton Reed. It stars Paul Rudd, as we know, as Ant-Man. Evangeline Lilly, who stars as the Wasp. Kind of forgot because the Wasp is barely involved in this movie. So, yeah. And obviously, if you haven't seen the trailer, which I actually do try to avoid the trailers, but you couldn't with this movie. It was in many theaters. But there's been a new casting choice. Catherine Newton is now playing Cassie, which was something that I caught when the first trailer came out, replacing Laura Bailey, who I was a fan of in Avengers Endgame in her very small part. But I also like Catherine Newton, too. I think she's really talented, so there's the new casting choice. Bill Murray's barely in this movie. Jonathan Majors is the star, though. This film has a 48% on Rotten Tomatoes. I believe it is currently tied with Eternals, if you just let me check here. Eternals, which is actually still the lowest at 47%. So, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is the second lowest score in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, do I think this is the second worst Marvel movie? No, it is not. And if you don't want to see this movie because you're looking at the Rotten Tomatoes score, I promise you it is better than that. There are worse MCU movies, in my opinion. Movies I would much rather... Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I would much rather watch over a few, I wouldn't say many, Marvel movies in the cinematic universe. But if we're rattling off a few... I was not a fan of Captain Marvel. That's actually probably my least favorite. And Thor: The Dark World, I would also say this is way better than. You can make an argument for Iron Man 2. I enjoy seeing Robert Downey. Iron Man 3 hasn't really aged well. This is just off the top of my head. I'm just thinking of movies that I didn't enjoy. Ant-Man and the Wasp, even one of the worst ones, in my opinion. I have not seen all of the MCU movies since Endgame. I've seen Shang-Chi, which I really enjoyed. I saw Spider-Man No Way Home, obviously, because who didn't see that movie? And I've seen parts of the shows. I eventually want to catch up with all of it, but looks like I'm going to have to get cracking because This cinematic universe Disney is involved with, obviously, they have released nonstop content basically ever since Endgame, but mostly since the pandemic specifically. And you'll constantly hear what I'm about to tell you is that the MCU has become quantity over quality. These projects, when they're released, just don't have the same energy as they once had because there are just so many of them coming out. And I can't comment too much on the quality because I personally haven't seen all of these. So I can only comment on the things that I've seen. I saw Thor Love and Thunder. I thought it was okay. I was disappointed because it was one of my most anticipated because I'm a big Taika fan and I loved the third one. It was okay. It was fine. I don't hate that movie like a lot of people do. I actually enjoyed that movie more than this one. That may shock a lot of people. Not really sure, but it was basically I went into this movie with low expectations just because a Marvel movie really hasn't made my jaw drop ever since Spider-Man No Way Home, and it was mainly because of the rumors surrounding that movie. And if you haven't seen that, I don't know why, but I'm going to spoil it anyway. With Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield coming back, I mean, that was... I couldn't believe what I was watching on screen. So they were definitely relying on a lot of nostalgia there, but I will admit it worked, and I love that movie, still do. But this is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. This is the third Ant-Man movie. I really enjoy the first Ant-Man. I really do. I think it's good. I don't think it's one of the better Marvel movies. I think it's a little... At one point, I thought it was a little overrated, and now it looks even better because I think the following sequels are just not hitting it for people. The second one, people loved when it came out, but I think most people now understand that it just was kind of just mediocre. It wasn't terrible or anything. It was just very bland and forgettable. And this one, I'm not going to say it's worse than Ant-Man and the Wasp because I haven't seen Ant-Man and the Wasp basically since it came out. But we're going to get into it. First, let me talk about the positives. Kang. I'm not breaking news here. Jonathan Majors is excellent as Kang. I'm excited to see what they do with him. I was a little... I was expecting to be blown away by him just from what people were saying before the movie started. He's really good. Blown away? I mean, I'm not blown away by him. We're going to have to see his character continue to do things, which, spoilers, if you haven't seen what one of the future Marvel movies is called, the Kang Dynasty, I think you know what happens to Kang in this movie, or you can just take a lucky guess. Kang is going to be the future Thanos, basically. I just didn't find him as intimidating as Thanos, but I don't want to compare. Like, if you're a good villain, you're a good villain. He was a good villain, and that's tough for Marvel to say. I just wasn't blown away by him that I think most people are saying. But I am excited about it. I'm excited to see what he could do. I think Jonathan Majors is a great actor. I'm really excited to see Creed 3, which just seems like this is his month. Like, he's getting a lot of attention and showcasing a lot of his skills. It's always fun to see these characters. I think Paul Rudd as Ant-Man is great. Evangeline Lilly's fun to see. I don't know what's happening with her haircut. I don't get the haircut. I don't. I don't think it looks good. That's all I'm going to say about it. Don't think the haircut looks good. Michael Douglas, fun to see again. I wish I had more to do in the movie, but fun to see. It's cool to see Bill Murray for basically a cameo. Yeah. It's funny, as I'm looking at the Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania cast, Paul Rudd is the sixth person in the row behind Catherine Newton, Jonathan Majors, Evangeline Lilly, Tony McCarthy, and Bill Murray. and I just think it's funny because he's Ant-Man. Michelle Pfeiffer is also really fun to see, and that's, these guys are really good actors, and they're giving good performances. Catherine Newton, I think, we'll get into her and my thoughts on her later, but she was believable. Like, I don't think she was doing a bad job in the movie at all. I just had issues with the character and the writing, which was so not what I was expecting for her. Um, in regards to more positives, I'm excited to see the bigger story. I think it's interesting that they introduced Kang in a movie like Ant-Man, right? I think that was kind of cool. And I see a lot of people saying, who are criticizing this movie, they're saying things like, well, this is the third Ant-Man, and the other Ant-Mans are small scale, and that's why they were so good. This is bad because it's different from the small scale. I agree that it's cool and charming that the first Ant-Man is kind of just this small movie that's just really creative and fun. Um, but Ant-Man and the Wasp was pretty bland and boring for a small scale movie. And I kind of wanted to see them go bigger and do something different, which I respect and that they did here. And there's fun moments. There's entertaining fight sequences. Some of the comedy hits. A lot of it doesn't, unfortunately. Marvel still has this thing where they're going too far. After Guardians of the Galaxy, they basically have decided to make every Marvel movie a comedy. But they work in some movies, like Thor Ragnarok, I think is brilliant. But, a lot of people criticize the comedy in Love and Thunder, and while I agree, although I thought there were moments in Love and Thunder that were way funnier than in this movie. Some of the jokes in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania hit, and some of them are some of the most embarrassing jokes I think I've ever seen in, like, big budget movies. Like, we're talking Transformers bad humor. Like, some of this stuff is cringe. And I was shocked. Like, I was literally, like, raising my hands up. Like, what are you guys thinking? Who thought this? Who thought this was a good idea? And that's disappointing because Paul Rudd is. All these guys are good with comedy. Paul Rudd specifically, though, is great with comedy, and he has some really funny moments in this movie. And he's likable, and he's charismatic, and I enjoyed parts of this movie. It's not awful. It is disappointing because this is the start of Phase 5. I haven't seen all of Phase 4, but for those of you who don't know, I have seen every Marvel movie except for a handful of the Phase 4s, but people were very disappointed with Phase 4, and I haven't finished any of the shows because I just lost interest after there being so many, and I know what happens in them, so, like, I know the stories. Like, I know, Loki introduces Kang, and I know Loki introduces the multiverse and stuff. Spoilers if you haven't seen Loki, I guess. Well, I haven't seen Loki, and I know that. But I'll eventually watch them and catch up with them, but to me, like, if you're making a good movie, like, I shouldn't have to know every ticky-tack detail. And I will give this movie some respect. Like, I was able to follow the story enough to where I didn't need to know all the things that happened before it, like ticky-tack, like I didn't have to see everything. But I haven't seen any of the shows, and I haven't seen some of the movies. Like, I haven't seen Eternals, so I have no idea what Eternals is like. I haven't heard good things, obviously. I've only seen Spider-Man No Way Home, Shang-Chi, Thor Love and Thunder. I haven't even seen the new Black Panther yet, but I will soon. But people were very disappointed with Phase 4, and I don't have too much of an opinion on that, but I will judge Phase 5's first film, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and I think it's a huge disappointment. It didn't feel it felt mindless and disposable, which kind of sucks. And I'm excited to see what they do, but I'm also cautious. And before I get into, there's two other things I want to go into. One is the CGI overuse. There's been all these reports that Disney has been rushing their effects workers, their visual effects workers. And let's just say after I've seen this movie, you could tell because some of the CGI in this movie, not some, pretty much all of it, is very Star Wars prequel-ish. Like there's so many moments where I just can't help but think of the Star Wars prequels. Like legitimately looks that bad. And I'm not, I'm not trying to rip on these visual effects people, but you know, it was it was kind of an eyesore. Some of these CGI messes, no sets, and I understand you have to do that for the quantum realm because it's fake. It's not real. But it would have been nice to see some sets, you know, maybe not, this whole green screen bonanza of a movie that's just not real looking in the slightest. Like you're never like looking at this place like, oh, this is real. Like these characters are in a situation and they're in life-threatening situations because you just don't believe it. Like you look at it and you're like, this looks fake. It just looks fake. And Marvel's really excellent with their CG, I think, and this was the first one in a while that I remember off the top of my head where I was looking at the CG. Like you could look at Hulk in 2008 with the Incredible Hulk film, and you could look at Hulk and be like, yeah, it doesn't look real. It's dated, but this is gonna date big time. Quantumania is gonna date big time, and the first two aren't because they aren't in fake places. As far as the script, it's an absolute mess. Things happen that don't make sense to me, and also just characters make decisions that I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, why is this a big deal? Like, why? And also, the writing for some characters is just like some of them have nothing to do, and they're likable and awesome, and you want to see them do things, but they're very sidelined, and you jump around a lot, and there's Quantumverse characters, and there's the current characters, and Cassie's older. We have to see what she's like, and before I go into spoilers, I gotta talk about the recasting of Cassie from Laura Bailey to Catherine Newton. I thought Catherine Newton, did fine. I think she's good, but her character is annoying. And when I say she's annoying, I'm not saying it's because she's the smart girl or anything. I'm not saying that, oh, she's a smart girl, that's why she's not. No. She's kind of a brat. She's constantly arguing with her dad about stuff, which I get it. She's a teenager. I get it. But, she just does things like that at the beginning of the movie. Like, she's in jail, and she's also kind of a troublemaker, and she's constantly judging Paul Rudd's character and making him sound like an idiot. Basically, like, he just saved the world. Like, let the guy chill a little bit, and she's kind of acting like it's nothing, and I don't know, it's just. And then she's apparently been working on this I guess we're heading into spoilers now. All right, spoilers. Well, she's been working on this device behind everyone's back because I guess that's what she does in her free time, which is cool, I guess. And I just didn't buy it. I just didn't buy that. But she goes into the quantum verse, or the quantum realm, and Kang brings him in because of an error, because Kang has a relationship with Michelle Pfeiffer's character, Janet. and Janet wants her to shut it off. Of course, they don't do it in time, and now they're in this situation. And that's the first, like, that's after 12 minutes. There's more stuff that goes on, but they're stuck in there after the first 12 minutes. And so now that we're in spoilers, um, we could talk about that. Janet basically refuses to tell anybody what's happened on this with her experience for the longest time, which is a huge movie cliche. Like when something traumatic happens to somebody, they don't want to tell them, right? Which in some ways works, but in this situation, I don't get it because she, for some reason, like her husband's wants is curious about all this stuff, and she won't tell them anybody. Like her situation there was so dramatic, and I understand she did a lot of bad things there and a lot of bad experiences happened, but to not tell them anything, and then it leads to Cassie building this machine, so because she's curious, she's like, just tell them. Like, why? I don't understand why it's such a big deal for her to tell them. Like, we don't get a moment. Like, I get it. Like, we see that she has a relationship with Kang, and that ends up breaking apart, and then she realizes the horror she's done. Like, I get it. Like, in a way, I can kind of understand. But I'm also just like, if you just tell them, like, none of this stuff happens. I did not know MODOK was in this movie. I did not know MODOK was in this movie. MODOK is really the villain, Yellow Jacket. I'm forgetting his name. I'm forgetting Yellow Jacket's name. Darren Cross. Darren Cross plays him. Darren Cross is the name of the character. Corey Stoll plays him. Sorry. Darren Cross as Yellow Jacket in the first one. We saw him get sucked into the quantum realm in the first movie. We find out he's MODOK in this one. This character does not work. He's comic relief in a movie with so much comedy that it's insane. He looks ridiculous. If anybody, there's what I thought of. I don't know if anyone listening has seen those Thumb parody short movies directed and written by Steve Odekirk, like Thumb Wars and stuff. Like, if you ever look up Thumb Wars and you look at those things, like, it's like the faces on the thumbs. That's what it reminded me of. MODOK is, he just looks so unfinished. And I understand he looks weird. I know he's supposed to look weird. I know he's not supposed to look really real, but I just thought they could have done a bit better than what they did. And he absolutely has probably the worst joke in Marvel history. Iron Man 2 had Tony Stark peeing in his suit. That was bad. Marvel's had some bad jokes. Don't get me wrong. This one was massively cringe. It's when Catherine Newton, MODOK's all beaten up. I honestly forget why he was being, he just was destroyed. Or just he's injured, and he's crashed, and basically Cassie goes up and says, don't be a dick. Like, and she says it in a way that's like so like SNL-y. Like, I don't know, just don't be a dick. Like, she says it like in an unreal delivery. And I was like, where am I right now? Is this real? This is happening? And then MODOK says something like, but I don't know what else to be. He says something like, I'm such a dick. Like, he kept saying that. Like, it's too late. I'm such a dick. I think that's what it was. And Cassie goes, like, with a straight face, like, seriousness, like, in her delivery, like, it's never too late to be a dick. Or, like, Yeah, something like that. It's never too late to stop being a dick or something like that. And like, I legitimately heard people in my theater laugh at that, and I was like, wow, these people will just laugh at anything, huh? Because that was just the cringiest thing I've ever seen. Not to say I'm better than people, but watch some like legitimately funny stuff. Not that, because that was just massively cringe. And maybe they were laughing at the fact that it was so stupid, because I know that's why I was laughing. So maybe I couldn't even give them that courtesy. I literally just chuckled to myself. I guess I was laughing. I literally just looked at the screen and was like, "What? What is this? Like, what are you doing? Like, how is this scene? How does this scene exist in this movie?" With all, listen, there's jokes that aren't gonna land. I get it. Like, not everyone's gonna find the same thing funny, and I enjoy risks, right? And I do think this movie, maybe takes some risk, but not really. Like, it's the same thing, right? So it's the same formula. Like, you know, till recently at least, everything's back to normal at the end. Like, nothing really happens. I thought there was a real chance, because I don't think Paul Rudd's making another Ant-Man movie. I could be wrong, but I was expecting this to be one of the last ones. Paul Rudd gets into the fight with Kang at the end, and I thought Kang was gonna kill him, because he's beaten the absolute shit out of him, and I was like, wow, like, I was actually on the edge of my seat there. So that was one of the positives too. Is just like, it was a thrilling ending, and then he's fine, and then everything's kind of fine. And I did kind of find it funny when Paul Rudd's talking to himself, and he's like, "Well, everything's fine. I'm sure everything's fine, right? Everything's fine." And we all know Kang's gonna be back at some point. Um, so why this movie was kind of a letdown to me was just it didn't do anything to really draw me into these characters even more. I didn't add to anything that the previous Ant-Mans were building on, other than I'm seeing this quantum realm too. And honestly, it wasn't really that cool to look at, because I just thought it was fake. Like, they kind of hinted at how like insane the quantum realm is, and I go there and it's just kind of like this CGI fest that's very Star Wars prequely. Um, Again, some of the jokes work. I enjoy some of the jokes. The character with the holes, I thought that was pretty funny. Paul Rudd has some nice quips in there. I can't really remember them. There's some adult jokes that I liked. Oh yeah, Paul. A lot of the holes jokes were actually pretty funny when Paul Rudd has to count the holes. I thought that was funny. Um, there's some entertaining moments. Like, you can watch this movie and you could be like, okay, I'm being entertained, but I don't really want to pay attention to the story. You can have it. You can have it on, like, it'll distract your kids for a second, and when they're young, they're gonna, like, probably young kids probably gonna love this movie. They're gonna love going there. They're gonna love this experience. It's definitely gonna have its fans, and it's definitely not the second worst Marvel movie out there, or how, like, the critics rating is, like, although I'm honestly gonna agree with the critics in that perspective with the Rotten Tomato score. Like, it's very 50-50 for me. It's like 5 out of 10 type deal. And maybe a little better than that, but I think, like, if I were giving letter grades here, it'd probably be a C for me. It's entertaining, has its moments, but it's just a mess. And Michael Douglas. So we didn't talk about the characters not really doing anything. You learn about the past between Michelle Pfeiffer, Janet, and Kang with Jonathan Majors, and you learn some things. It's cool to kind of see what was happening, right? The way they developed that. You don't see Kang until really the second half of the movie, which I liked. And when you do see him, he's very Darth Vader-y, like, just, moving people all around like it's the Force, which was, it was very on the nose, but it was still fun. It was intimidating. It was cool to see him. But Michelle Pfeiffer, she's kind of just there to be like, the quantum realm is bad. We gotta protect ourselves. And then she's keeping a bunch of secrets. And, the secrets that she's keeping aren't really that interesting. So, yeah. And when it comes to Michael Douglas, he's literally there to be like the goofball old guy, which is crazy because it's Michael Douglas. Like, Michael Douglas is Michael Douglas. He's awesome. Like, he's this dude that's this. If you watch Michael Douglas in the first movie, I don't even really remember him in the second movie that much, but I can remember he was a much more of a character than this one. Michael Douglas in the first Ant-Man is awesome. Okay? He's great. And to see him in that movie, and then you see him in this movie as Hank Pym. Hank Pym is just a guy. Like, he's just this old man. And he has one cool moment with the ants, like with all the big ants come. I thought that was pretty cool. And it was like, oh wow, they finally found something for Michael Douglas to do other than just fly the ship and just kind of stay on the side. And one of the bigger disappointing things in this one is Evangeline Lilly as Hope. You know, she's obviously good. Again, I mentioned the haircut looks terrible in my opinion. Some people may be into it. But Ant-Man and the Wasp had so much of her. And it kind of sidelined Paul Rudd, which was interesting, an interesting choice. Something I didn't really like about the movie. But I thought she was cool. I thought she was badass, and I thought there was more to discover with that character. She does, like, nothing in this new movie. Like, nothing. I remember her scenes more in Avengers Endgame, when she, like, comes out with everybody, right? Everyone's back, and she comes out. Like, I remember her more in that movie. And she's in that movie for like if you're talking like shots, like she's probably in that movie like 5 minutes, 6 minutes. If you're totaling up all, maybe not even that. And I remember her way more in that movie than in this movie, which is saying a lot. Like, it's literally called Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And all she does in this movie is question her mom, deservedly so. Like, her mom's not telling her anything. And then, you know, maybe punch a few people. And, you know, she saves Paul Rudd. But she's so sidelined in this movie. And it's so weird. Like, in the first one, she's kind of this hungry daughter that has all these questions and wants to solve them. And that's interesting. And then the end credit scene for that one is, you know, you find out she's going to be the Wasp. Hank Pym is okay with letting his daughter go out and do stuff. And then the second one, she's a lot cooler. She's really badass, right? And she's taking people down. My only criticism with that is that Paul Rudd's kind of an idiot, or you know, Scott Lang's kind of an idiot in the second one. But nothing to take away from Evangeline Lilly. She's awesome in the second one. This one, though, she's so sidelined. And for no reason. Like, I don't get it. Like, why is she sidelined? I would have liked to have seen more from her, which was very disappointing. Especially because I like her as that character. So the movie's a letdown, unfortunately. And my thoughts on Marvel are they really nailed the Infinity Saga. I don't think anyone's questioning that. They really nailed the Infinity Saga. And I think Phase 4, I haven't seen all of Phase 4 yet, so I wouldn't know. But from what I've seen from Phase 4, I've seen kind of a lack of creativity, and I'm seeing the same stuff. And this has to change. I'm seeing overuse of comedy. The CGI effects are getting worse, which is nuts. You go back and you see stuff like, you know, the original Avengers movies, they look better. Like, they look better than this movie. That's because there's, like, real cities and stuff behind them. But a lot of that stuff is CGI. Like, they use a lot of CGI in these movies. And for this movie, it looked fake. So, I'm excited for new Marvel stuff. I wasn't really anticipating this movie. Because I didn't really like the last Ant-Man. Not necessarily, obviously, the newest buzz on Marvel, how they're disappointing people, it doesn't help. But the second Ant-Man movie didn't really impress me, and I wasn't really excited to see the third Ant-Man. but I was excited enough. Like, I'll go see it, and hopefully it's good. Like, I'll be like, all right, I'll see that. I'm looking forward to seeing this. I hope Guardians saves it, because Guardians 4 has the opportunity to save a lot, because James Gunn is writing it, right, and writing and directing it, and James Gunn, in my opinion, hasn't missed in a while. Like, he just hasn't. So I think a lot of people aren't fans of, not a lot of people, but a decent amount of people are not fans of the second Guardians. I haven't seen it in a while, but from what I remember, I really enjoyed it. I understand the flaws with that movie. I still had flaws with it, but I still really enjoyed it. I thought it was really entertaining. And then the first one is great. So the third one, I said the fourth Guardians. I think it's the third Guardians. I'm just losing track with all these movies. I hope the third Guardians can, fix things. Maybe not fix things. I don't want to put all that pressure on that movie, but I just hope it's more enjoyable than what we've gotten lately, with some of the Marvel stuff. Now, again, I'm going to catch up with Marvel this year, hopefully. Geez, unless they release 10 more shows in the next 5 days. But my thoughts on the MCU is I'm cautiously optimistic of the future. I hope they nail this. I hope they nail this new storyline, because the first storyline was great, and I just hope it doesn't become a money machine, which it looks like it's becoming. I think a lot of people are listening to, like, a lot of older filmmakers coming out, like Martin Scorsese's coming out about Marvel movies, doesn't dig them. Quentin Tarantino recently digging on Marvel movies, like, and he was a Marvel fan. Like, they have an audience, and they're really special to go watch. That Infinity War Endgame, that year was amazing for Marvel fans. Like, I remember rewatching all of them to before Endgame, and I was just it was one of the best theater experiences of my life, going to see that film. And I went to go see it with my dad and my brothers, and like my dad even was like, "Wow, that was fun." So they have an audience, and they can be awesome and excellent. Some of the best movies of this generation, like, they can be that. But you gotta make them good. Like Kevin Feige, I saw Kevin Feige recently say something like, "I don't think people will ever be sick of comic book movies." And the reality is, they won't be sick of good comic book movies. I don't see people complaining about the Batman or Joker or, the recent Suicide Squad movie. But people are getting annoyed with Black Adam and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and Thor: Love and Thunder. Like, people are getting sick of those movies, or like Venom, the recent Venom movies, or Morbius. Just these comic book movies that just aren't great. And you're going to get movies that aren't great. And I respect filmmakers to the point where I see all the good in these movies. Like, I saw Black Adam. I thought it was fine, and I'll probably never watch it again. But that's just my opinion. I don't think they should stop making them. I don't think these filmmakers should stop getting opportunities. I just think these studios need to chill with the content of comic book movies they're releasing all the time, because if the more you continue to make mediocre stuff, like, let me make this clear. This is not a bad movie. Like, I don't think this is a bad movie. I just think it's very disappointing, and I think it has a lot, a good amount of good things in it. It's just got a lot of stuff that brings it down. So I didn't hate this movie. I didn't hate watching it. Like, I enjoyed going to the theater to see this movie, and like I always do with Marvel movies. But I'll probably never watch this again, like, willingly. Unless I want to, like, rewatch things to prepare for the future, Marvel Cinematic sequels. And I just hope, like, they start to care and listen to people. Like, hey, like, it doesn't matter about the quantity of shows you're releasing. Like, make them good, and people are gonna like it. Like, people are gonna like it no matter what. People are gonna fangirl out. Like, they're gonna see this and then you'll be like, Marvel, good, boom, yay, haters, critics, shut up. But, it's important to think for yourself, and I do think people are going maybe a bit too far with how bad these movies have been recently. Like, some people hated Thor: Love and Thunder like it was the worst thing in the world. It's not. It's fine. It's a fine movie. And like most things these days, we become very, divisive to the point where people are going too far on both sides, whether they love everything that they make or they hate everything that they make. And it's become cool to hate on Marvel recently, so I thought it was important to say that this movie is worth going to the theater to see. And I think if you haven't seen it, I would say if you haven't seen this movie yet, I hope it's because you've chosen not to see this movie because you're just not interested, not because anybody else is affecting you. And sometimes we can all be guilty of that. I know I've been guilty of it many times, especially recently with Marvel, but I will eventually check out these Marvel products. I've just been stalling lately. I've been watching other stuff. Not even listening to other people, I just wasn't interested in what to see about WandaVision. I think I watched the first 2 episodes of WandaVision, and, the new Captain America and the new Loki and all this stuff. Like, I wasn't too interested, but I will catch up with it, and hopefully Marvel creates better content in the future. I'm excited for Guardians 3. It was one of my top 10 anticipated for the year. It wasn't my number one. I think it's probably the most... I'm trying to think if there's any other comic book, not including Into the Spider-Verse, because that's not MCU. I mean, who knows, though? It could be MCU. They could be making that MCU in a few years. I have no idea. But other than that, pretty sure, I think Guardians is the comic book movie that everyone's excited for this year. There's other stuff. The Flash is also a big deal. But I think, for me, Guardians is the one that's, that's the one I think I'm the most excited for as far as comic book movies are concerned. But that's really it, man. It's really disappointing to make this because I didn't want to be as let down as I was in Ant-Man, and it kind of was exactly what I was expecting, and that's sad to hear. So we'll see what happens with Kang. I'm intrigued, but not fully bought in yet. He's cool to watch in this movie. I think he's fun. He's probably the best villain I've seen in a while. Obviously, he's going to be a big part of this going forward. So hopefully they can knock it out of the park with the writing. However, this was a very messy movie. And I hope it's not like a Rise of Skywalker situation where Disney's, Disney and is just, looking for pieces and not focused on making a compelling story like the original Infinity Saga was from Marvel. So that's it for the podcast today. I just wanted to get this out on Ant-Man because I've been paying attention to the box office numbers, and this past weekend was very disappointing. So, I wanted to get this out before, it's obviously a little late, but we're going to get into other movies that come out this year. I do want to talk about my top 10 most anticipated movies of the year because we have not seen one of them yet. I believe, if I'm looking at it right now, yeah, not one... Because I was just looking at my honorable mentions. Not one movie that I have that I'm anticipating for the year has come out yet, but one will be coming out in March. So that's why I want to do that as soon as possible. More NBA stuff coming soon as well. So it's going to be a lot of film, a lot of NBA, a lot of sports. Baseball season's coming up, right? And then football in the fall and all that stuff. So I'm really excited to continue making these. I really appreciate you guys listening, sticking around. I hope you enjoyed the last episode too, my Brooklyn Nets rant. And I do encourage you, if you haven't seen Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, to see it. I like supporting films and filmmakers and theaters. This is definitely a theater experience. So if you just want to spend a couple time, and I do think like you don't, if you haven't seen any of the recent Marvel stuff, like I don't think you have to, but because I still followed the story, but you obviously have to know most of the Marvel stuff. So, it is what it is, man. Hopefully they can move on, and hopefully they can accept the criticism. I don't think you should listen to the fans too much, because I think that's not a good way of doing things. I don't know if that's good for business. I think that's kind of what they did with Star Wars a bit, and it didn't really work out. So listening to the fans is important, but also making the smart decisions and realizing what's right to make compelling stories and good movies. Just follow the history of what makes good franchises and good movies work. That's what I suggest Disney does. So if you haven't seen Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and you've listened to this whole podcast, I really appreciate it, because I spoiled a bunch of things for you, and that probably proves that you don't care, which is sad when it comes to the new Marvel movies. So, I really appreciate you guys listening to this. Next episode should be about my predictions or my power rankings and predictions for all the NBA teams coming in to the second half of the season after the All-Star break, and maybe some quick little All-Star break thoughts, even though it was about a week ago. Just quick ones because it was irrelevant. Quick 2 minutes is going to be as irrelevant as that weekend was. So have a good day, guys. I really appreciate you listening. Thank you for listening to the JB Podcast. Have a good day, everybody.